This is Your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lindsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. So I woke up this morning and asked myself, how the hell do I endure all of this, right? With my CRPS and my pain and all of this. How do I endure so much stress and pain and the feeling like suffocated in it sometimes and stifled dreams, things that I thought I'd be doing right now that I can't physically do right now, right, guys? It's coming. The sadness, the hurt, like past trauma and current traumas. How do I undo this? How do I endure? So I Googled endurance, and this is what I do. And this is what so many of us do, right? We endure. I endure unpleasant and difficult processes or situations without giving way. I fall, I cry, I lose my mind, but I don't give up. And I endure the emotional chaos of my diagnosis and how it has uprooted every single ounce of my existence and those in my life as well. But I withstand that hardship and adversity with as much grace and laughter and tears, as you all know from listening to this one, as I possibly can. And then there's looking at endurance from a different lens, right? The lens of sport, if you will, the lens of persevering through unbearable conditions to continue in a long distance race to a finish line. And a finish line that you kind of set for yourself, which I love that idea of setting our own goals, right? So we set these finish lines for ourselves. And it's not unlike my guest today. Wow, guys, just get ready for this wild and crazy animal. We are certainly cut from the same cloth, that's for sure. So let's get into this thing today. So we're going to talk about one of our favorite topics, cancer, right? We've all been affected in some way, shape, or form by cancer. We've experienced it. We've looked it straight in the eye, whether it is from, even if it's far removed. We've had people that are in our lives. I've talked about my aunt passing away from brain cancer. Right now, I've got an uncle who has a brain tumor that's killing him. He's going to die any time. And it's horrible. And we're all affected from it, right? And we've all been on this emotional journey and have dealt with the chaos that cancer throws at us to endure. And we've talked to so many people that have endured their cancer diagnoses and have lost many to it. One of my past guests, in fact, Fitz Kohler, is a constant reminder of how endurance and perseverance and spirit and spunk helped save her from her cancer diagnosis. And not everybody is as lucky as she is. So let's be real. I mean, cancer is like the queen of emotional chaos, right? She injects high doses of fear and anxiety and uncertainty into the life of the patient and the caregiver and the loved ones. So let's pull her off our throne and let's talk about it and how my guest has worked his ass off to do just that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my guest today, David Richmond. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Oh my God, you're like a verbal writer as well.
I'm something.
You're something. I'm great. Thank you, Lindsay. Really excited to talk to you. Really.
Oh, thank you so much. So David is an author, public speaker, and an endurance athlete whose mission is to form more meaningful human connections through storytelling, and that he does well. His first book, Winning in the Middle of the Pack, discussed how to get more out of ourselves than ever imagined. But for our conversation today, we're talking a little bit about his second book, right? It's called Cycle of Lives. David shares stories of people overcoming trauma and delves deeply into their emotional journeys with cancer. And he continues to do Ironman triathlons and recently completed, which you'll hear about in regards to the book, a solo over 5,000 mile bike ride, which is just freaking insane. And we're going to talk about it. So let's get started. I'd like to roll out the red carpet for you. And boy, do you deserve it.
As long as it's soft. I got sore feet from all the running.
Oh my gosh, you're insane. I can't wait to get into this with you. So I'd like to start talking about why in the hell did you decide to get on your bike and ride across the country right out of the gates? And let's just take it from there.
Okay, Lindsay. So honest, like we're just us talking, right?
100%.
Honest? A lot of, you know how like they say like nothing good happens after 2 a.m. at a party?
Yes.
but only epic things happen after 2:00 in the morning at the
Amen.
party.
That's why we
Yeah,
get
so
along
nothing
so
good,
well.
only epic things. So there's nothing good that can come out of a stupid gimmick except for something epic. And I just thought it was gimmicky. I thought, like, here's what I think. Like, humans are only connected by two things. We're connected by emotion. Now, we might have different emotional responses, but we have the same basket of emotions to draw from. All of us have those emotions. Some can't tap into them, but we all have the same basket. The other thing we're connected by is story. And I don't know a single person alive who, if you catch somebody eye to eye and you go, hey, I got this story for you. You got to hear the story. Who doesn't stop to hear the story? We're all connected by story. So I thought, after interviewing these people for a couple of years and thinking that we're all connected by the emotion, we're connected by stories, what better way to connect these stories than to get on my bike and bike zigzagging to each one of the participants so that I could connect those stories. So it kind of came as a gimmicky thing, like, oh yeah, I could connect them by getting on my bike. And then all of a sudden I realized, holy crap, that's like 5,000 miles. And I only got X time to do it. And yeah, it's going to be a pretty big undertaking. But you know what? In retrospect, it was really an important facet of the book.
It's really unbelievable. So this guy wrote a book about 15 people's different lives, right? Different stories, like he's talking about in relation to their cancer journeys. And all of them are just, they're heart stopping. I cried, I laughed, just because I got to know this dude a little bit. There was a lot of his smart assness. It really is an amazing journey. And the way in which you put it together was really cool. Can we actually talk about, I'm going to backstep just a little bit, because a lot of this came from what happened to your sister, June.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about June for us?
Sure, and thank you for that. I'll be quick about it, but basically the starting point of this project and the starting point of answering your question happened with me at a big transformation point in my life. So I was an overweight smoker. I was married to an abusive alcoholic. I had 4-year-old twins. On one side of the coin, life was great. I was running a massive business for a big Wall Street firm. Life was good. Everything was great. On the other side of the coin, it was a death trap. I was making bad decisions. I was in a horrible situation and my life needed to change. And I heard kind of the right words at the right time and started to go on a path to change my life. Like for the first time ever. This was right before I turned 40. Like I finally got it. Like I finally understood, like, okay, you got to live with intention. You got to try to be your best self. You got to lean into who you could become, and you got to let go of all the shit, and you got to just go forward.
Yeah.
And I see this big, huge journey ahead of me. And like, I'm excited for the first time in my life of what I'm going to become. And right at that same time, I get a call from my sister who, coming out of a very traumatic childhood, we were very close in age and had overcome a lot of difficulty, but she was in a really great place in her life. And at that exact same time, she called me up and she said, hey, I got brain cancer. I'm going to die soon. And I went, holy crap. Like, the dichotomy of my finally getting this endless journey ahead of me where I'm kind of going to figure it all out. And then her having a very short and very narrow journey ahead of her. And it was really touching to me. So I really paid attention and I tried to figure out, like, how in the world do you navigate that? I didn't know how to navigate either road.
Yeah,
but I certainly didn't know how to navigate that road of like knowing you're going to die and having a beautiful marriage and beautiful kids and a great circle of friends. And you're really grounded in being your best self. And that's going to be taken away soon. How do you navigate that? And I wanted to learn. And what I noticed, Lindsay, was that not just her, but everybody that was around her or everybody that I encountered when I did events to raise money and I paid attention and I talked to doctors and I talked to nurses and whatever, I noticed that everybody had a same common theme at a certain level is they could take care of stuff. They could deal with the tasks about the cancer, but they couldn't deal with the emotion of cancer. And how do you start a hard conversation? Like, I can understand how to help Lindsay physically with some tasks, but how do I sit down and look Lindsay in the eye and go, like, wow, dude, how are you feeling about what's going on? Like, what's it like? Like, that's hard to do, man. That's hard to do.
It is. It's very lonely in the shadows of any diagnosis that's going to affect you long term, whether it's, what my diagnosis is not cancer, but it feels like a version of cancer to me because it is killing me and slowly. And it's driving me batshit crazy. But it's a very lonely place and it's lonely for the people around you too. Like my sweetie, he feels helpless and hopeless in some cases where it's like, you can't do anything in those moments where I am just dead to the world. I can't walk. I can't eat. I can't, all of those places. When you normally look at me and see me and talk to me, I'm this person right now, right? But
Right.
this person is not here all of the time. She shows up, but the darkness is very, very scary and very lonely. And so it's neat for people that even give a crap like you, honestly, to care to even come into those dark places with us, because it is scary and it is lonely.
And it's like you said, it's lonely. It's very, and not
Yeah.
only do you isolate because you don't want to bring people down and you don't want to get sympathy and you don't want people to hold you at a certain level. I mean, there's a million things that are going on in your head that while
Right.
you're isolating. And then there's also the same amount of things that are going in other people's heads that are abandoning you. It's like, I literally just got a call from a friend of mine. He had his 17-year-old daughter on the phone and she said, "Hey, I need your help." And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And she said, "My friend, his mom just got diagnosed with breast cancer. And obviously I can't talk to him. Obviously I got to give him time to figure it out. When do I say something and what can I say?" And I'm like, let me tell you something, dude. Like every single one of his friends is saying, obviously, I need to leave him alone. Obviously, I can't talk to him. And what do you think that makes him feel like? Nobody
Oh, wow.
cares.
Yeah.
He's alone.
Yep.
So obviously, you need to talk to him right now.
Yeah.
And say, I don't know what the hell to say to you. I can't even imagine what the hell you're going through, but I need to talk to you and I need to make sure you're okay. And I need to let you know that I care.
Yeah.
Right? Because obviously nobody else is doing that. So it's not only just a very isolating place. People oftentimes, and most of the time, they feel abandonment, or to prevent isolation or abandonment, they just lock everything up inside and never deal with it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help us form authentic, deep connections. That doesn't fulfill who we need to be in this life. And that can probably lead to more stuff. If you didn't have an outlet, if you didn't have somebody that could care, somebody that you could look at soul to soul and have some type of relief from the emotional chaos that you're going through, it might make things a heck of a lot worse.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, this past couple of weeks have been fairly challenging in the pain department over here. Not that it isn't normally challenging, but it's been significantly higher over the past couple of weeks. And I know the reasons why, but man, I've just needed to just like sob and cry and yell and get mad and throw things to just like get rid of some of that junk. Otherwise, it's just going to sit inside our bods like that book. And I say it all the time, the body keeps score, but it is totally true. It's just going to sit there and keep traumatizing us more and more if we don't reach out and touch somebody,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we have to, and don't be afraid to reach out to your loved ones and say something. I certainly would much rather have people give a crap and love me and reach out to me and want to know how I'm doing than completely abandon me and feel like, oh gosh, I've got to walk on eggshells around her or handle her with kid gloves. I'm like, dude, it's me. Like, no, please be invasive, show up, be
Right.
here for me.
Yeah. Lindsay, I don't know a lot, but I'll tell you one thing I know for certain. Okay. Every single person knows somebody in their life right now that is going through something absolutely horribly traumatic.
Yep.
And you, the listener, have not reached out to them because you're afraid. I spent so much time. I don't know what to say. I got so busy. My problems are so minor. If I start asking, I have really good things happen and they know it. So now I can't call them because it's going to make them feel bad. Like, what the hell do I say? Like, it's better just not to call. There'll be a better time. We all know. I absolutely 100% guarantee you that there's somebody that's coming up on an anniversary of a death of a loved one. They had, a niece that had a major problem. I guarantee you there's somebody out there that's going, I know this person I should call, but I haven't called because I don't know what the hell to say.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up, especially in relation to my problems are minor. And I would like to address that because it doesn't matter if your problems are minor in comparison to somebody else. You still are struggling through whatever you're struggling with. Like, I have people that are like, oh God, my back hurts. And like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to like complain about pain because I know you go through far more than me. I'm like, oh my God, no, thank God someone else is in pain. Yep. Please tell me, experience that you're experiencing humanity like the rest of us are, like don't walk on eggshells around me. And we might push back at you though. And don't let that get in the way of you continuously coming back towards us and giving us love, because we don't know how to respond either. It's tough, and I can't speak in regards to cancer, but I can certainly speak in regards to my version of it. So in relation to your sister, June, I know that the outcome was not good.
Mm-hmm.
What happened and how did that trigger what you just did with this miles and thousands of miles across our nation?
Yeah. So what happened was that she became a board study, which was a good thing for her because it prolonged her life and increased her care, I think. And, that's such a wonderful thing if you can get matched up with a provider, a drug, whatever that can make a study out of you. You get more attention, right? They need you and you need them, just
Sure.
matching the two is together. So, but eventually, and not too long after her diagnosis, she passed, and it was really, really difficult for the people around her. Her husband and kids were very close to her, and his family very close to her. I was very close to her too, but not kind of part of that part of the inner circle. Her friends took it really, really hard. It was really tough because she was a force of nature, very lively. Like you, she walks into a room and owns it, right? Doesn't apologize, just is who she is, and people are gravitated to her. And so that was kind of a bummer and it was a big loss. But we oftentimes, if there's a silver lining in cancer, we oftentimes can wrap things up. We have the opportunity to form the deepest, most authentic connection with those people. It's not going to be pleasant all the time. And we might still be afraid to ask questions or to go deep, but it does give us a chance. And her and I weren't able to talk about everything, but we were able to talk about a lot of stuff. And that was her inviting me to talk to her and me not being afraid to talk to her. So at least we got that out, and after she passed, I really thought like, well, okay, well, am I making this up? Like that people have a difficulty or talking, about trauma, and especially in relation to earlier life trauma.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
how are you dealing with your chronic pain and the loneliness of that in relation to earlier traumas that you had, right? Because that's very important for me to understand what you're going through. I need to understand what you've been through, and so I wanted to see if I was myopic. Was that one situation that I'm blowing up and making a reality, or is that the reality and I'm trying to like finally discover it? That's the reality. And everybody I spoke to had that at some level that they isolated, they got abandoned, they kept it all inside. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to talk about it or let other people talk to them about it. We just don't have those tools. And so I'm not qualified to solve the answer of how do we do that. But I thought I was qualified to be able to open up the curtain and say, you want to connect with Lindsay? Let me tell you who she is. Let me show you who she is. That way we might be able to, next time we run into Lindsay or somebody like her, we might be able to understand how to better connect to them. And that's, and in the end, that's all that life's about, right?
But it is true because, we meet these people in our lives, not unlike you and me. And, in our own weird way, through doing episodes on this show, I'm connected to these people, some more specifically than others, that I know I would be able to reach out to you in 10 fucking years from now and just be like, what's up? Like, I need an ear. And you would totally be that person. And I would be the same. That is something that is innate in me, though. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that. Like you're talking about being able to open up and share when it came to childhood trauma and just trauma all the way through even my last my last marriage. How many times am I married? My 20th marriage, whatever. It feels that way some days. But, going back to all of the different things that have happened in my life, like you're saying, you have to understand where you came from to understand where we are. And that's a challenge because it is hard to open up and be vulnerable and share. And that's something I had to learn to do this show, because I was like, if I'm not going to be real and authentic, then I might as well just stop this immediately because it would just be a lie. And so it's been challenging to share some of the dark and dirty and twisty stuff that I've done or things that have happened to me. And I feel so much better that I'm doing it. Doesn't mean that it's easy. It's fucking hard. It is hard and it's sad and it's challenging. But man, am I feeling more blessed that I've chosen to go that route than do what I've done my whole life, which is stuff it down and hide it and pretend that nothing was going on.
Yeah. And if you're not able to lean into that like deep, real self, I mean, how many times I do this? Oftentimes I wonder like, like I knew that person for 20 years and they're not in my life anymore. And you know what? There's nothing I'm missing. I don't have a single deep, meaningful like memory of whatever. And I wasted 20 years. And then I think about this one tiny little 5-minute interaction with some stranger that has never left me in 20 years. And I go, oh my God, like how ridiculous is it that you can have that shallow of a connection on purpose and that deep of a connection on purpose. And it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or 20 years, right? And so that's what I was fascinated by, is just the ability to see someone. And the honor that I got in writing this book really was, not everybody could do it. And I certainly couldn't get everything out of everyone. And not everybody could come prepared to give me what I needed. But everybody that made the book, multiple times in our conversations, they would look me in the eye. Well, we were always talking on the phone, but I could tell they would be looking at me in the eye if we were sitting next to each other. But they took a deep breath and they went, I've never really ever talked about that.
It's empowering, isn't it?
I've never dealt with X. I've never told, can I tell you something? I've never told anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to know that, because the reader needs to know.
And I loved that about the book, because you went through the motions of that in the book, talking about how you got people to tell their stories and how they were, I'm not sure about, the hesitation that so many of them had. And you chose 15 different stories. I can't imagine how many you actually had. As I was reading it, I was just like, oh my gosh, like he must have like more and more and more. How did you go about finding the people for, I was going to call them guests, the guests in your book, the stories in your book. How did you go about finding these people? And how did you choose? I mean, my gosh, so these stories are just, you must have just heard, well, at least from my experience reading your book, you heard stories and stories and stories that weren't even part of your book, but you threw in, here and there where you talked to somebody else that was telling them about a story that helped you, even in that bike story. You got to talk. There's so many things I want to talk about.
Sure.
I'm going all over the place.
No, I understand your question. Yeah. So let me tell you what my thought process was. So I figure if you talk to 15 women about breast cancer and how they dealt with breast cancer, that it would maybe give you a wider perspective on dealing with that. If you dealt with 15 people that were encountering early onset Alzheimer's, you could kind of maybe get a better... My thought process was this: I don't want to solve for a problem. What I want to do is I looked at imagine a wheel on a bicycle, a cycle of lives, right? Imagine a wheel on a bicycle, and it's separated into a million sections by all those spokes in the wheel, right? And so what I wanted to do was to fill in each one of those sections by going, I want young, old, in between. I want patient, doctor, nurse, caregiver. I wanted them to encounter cancer at a young age. I wanted them to encounter cancer at an old age. I wanted it to be just a fear of cancer, or having lived with cancer 5 different times in their adult life. I wanted all types of cancer, severity, everything so I could shine a light on as many facets. And then what made me pick the people was to fill in more spokes of what kind of traumas did you overcome? Because I can identify with failed marriages. I can identify with being in an abusive relationship. I can identify with having shitty parents. I can identify with a lot of things. I might not be able to identify with what's it like as a woman getting breast cancer. Okay. But I can understand how, maybe because you grew up in a household that was brutal, like my household was brutal, I might understand how you might not be able to open up about things. Right. I might understand, so what I wanted to do is cover as many sections in the wheel as possible, so that I could fill it all in, so we can understand the human experience. And so when I picked stories, they needed to have enough differentiation from all the other stories that it would cover the whole human experience. Because I don't want to try to solve for a problem. I just want to be able to show people what lies behind the curtain. What have people gone through, and what are they going through? And boy, we have no idea. Yeah.
Well, you accomplished just that. And I'm not blowing sunshine up your ass here, buddy.
Who doesn't need that sometimes? No.
I mean, it tickles. But no, it's just a remarkable idea, at least from my perspective. And I really enjoyed it. Was there any story particularly in your book that stood out more than others? I mean, I know that's a tough question. They're all they're so sad and so tragic, and also at the same time so incredibly uplifting and positive.
I'll tell you the one I think that really gave me a new way of thinking about everything was the story of a woman who, when she found out that she had been diagnosed with brain cancer, a tumor the size of a grapefruit, and that she was being wheeled into surgery, which she might not come out of, and she was going to leave her husband and 6 kids behind. And when her husband told her what was going on, because they had no idea, when her husband told her what was going on, she said, "Thank God it's cancer." And her greatest emotion from cancer was gratitude. And I'm like,
Whoa.
how is that even possible?
Right?
And it's not, right? It's not possible. How could it even be possible? And don't give me some like, oh, God gives you what you can handle. But literally she cried tears of joy and gratitude for hearing that. And I couldn't wrap my brain around it until I really understood the story. And each story kind of gave me that, why can't you have a positive emotion like gratitude, knowing that you are being willed into surgery? And like, what's the story behind that? The story, to be really, really brief, is 25 years of a marriage, tons of therapy, 6 kids, lost one at 18 months. I mean, they have come through the ringer, these people, and they're very fortunate, very successful in life, financially and otherwise. But she started going downhill mentally. And so much to a point that she decided, in a moment of clarity, during a tremendous amount of chaos, that she was the problem. And the only way that we can keep our family together is to put me in a mental institution.
Whoa.
And she's the one that had to come to the realization that she was going crazy. She was the problem. And she had to extricate herself from her beautiful life and put herself in a mental institution to get better, because it was her. And when they put her in the institution, they put her through a battery of tests. Within 24 hours, they called up her husband and said, she's got a tumor the size of a grapefruit.
That was what it was.
It's almost going to make me cry. And she said, thank God it's cancer.
Oh my gosh.
So how are you not going to allow somebody to feel gratitude? How are you going to tell them how to feel about what they're going through? Because you have no idea what they're going through. And so those are the kind of stories that made me think, like if I can tell the story the way that it needs to be told, which is, let's just strip it all bare and tell everybody what you've been through. It might make me understand next time when you say something that I think is freaking stupid, like, oh my God, I'm so grateful that my leg got cut off, that I'm not going to look at you like you're a moron.
Yeah. I mean, it's even when, and I use this example here and there, but it's like when we're driving, we all get pissed off at people that are on the road, right? People are doing stupid shit left and right around us. They're texting, they're doing their makeup, they're shaving, they're drinking, they're eating. What they're like doing an entire day's work in their car while they're driving. It drives me nuts. But you've got some people that, their hands are on their wheel and they're speeding through. And I keep thinking in my head, like, maybe their wife is in the back seat giving birth and they're on the way to the hospital. Or maybe they just found out that they have cancer. Or maybe they just found out that their daughter was in a car accident and they're rushing. So, I mean, they might not all be assholes around us, right? Like, we all have to give each other some grace that there might be some stuff going on in their lives that are causing them to behave this way. That doesn't necessarily give everybody a free pass to drive like an a-hole. But I'm just saying it is a good representation and an example of, we don't know what's going on around us. We just don't, and we need to be a little bit more loving in regards to it. That's for sure.
I just kind of started being able to verbalize this lately, but the universe is a great mirror, right? And it reflects what we see. And if I see people as one-dimensional, then the universe is going to show me that people are one-dimensional. And that's okay, because that's just the way I'm viewing the world. That's what I'm seeing. So that's what gets reflected back on me. If I have a deeper understanding that people are multidimensional and that there is more to the story, and that maybe I don't know everything, then guess what the universe is going to show me? That people are multidimensional
Right,
and I don't know shit. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's important. And each one of these stories has given me at least one, but probably 2 or 3 or 4 really points of reference to how amazing people are and what the things that they've gone through. And I tried my hardest in telling these stories so that people could sit back and go, oh yeah, okay. So when you say you're okay, it really doesn't mean that, right?
No, of course not. It's just like when women say to you men in our lives, we're fine.
Yeah, we're fine.
All right, we're fine. I'm fine. That does not mean we're fine, by the way.
I mean, it could, but very rarely.
Very rarely. Very rarely.
Yeah.
So let's get to the actual biking part of this, because that is like a whole other part of this book, obviously, because you're telling these stories of these people and then you're getting into the nitty gritty of what you're doing on the daily. Well, first of all, let's talk about why you got on a bike and why you wanted to go do this crazy ass thing that you just did and put it into this book. But why did you get behind on a bike of all things? Because I hate cyclists, by the way. And I'm pointing at them. I love you, but I'm like, come on, I don't want to share the road with you. You drive me crazy. But why you did this, and give us like, I want you to tell the story about the Texas and the bridge, because that is just insane. I literally felt like I was there with you. You wrote it so eloquently.
Okay, so first of all, 1 out of every 10 drivers is a total jerk. Let's be honest, okay?
Only
And
one?
let's be honest, 1 out of every 10 cyclists thinks they own the road.
I
Okay.
feel like it's 9 out of 10.
No, it's really not. It's really not. Stop focusing on the one and take care for the 9, because it's
Okay, fine.
scary on the road,
Oh,
man.
it is scary. Reading this book made me not want to ever be on the road outside of a car. And I've driven through every state in this nation, as well as all through Canada. So I understand the open road is scary. That's for sure.
I'm still traumatized by it. But again, in the vein of not wanting to be myopic and creating my own reality, I said, okay, well, you got all these stories, and okay, yeah, they're okay, but maybe you attracted those stories, and there's really only 15 people that have a deep battle with the emotional chaos of cancer, right? And then I said, well, if you get on your bike and you go check it out, maybe you'll find out if you're right or wrong. And every single day, Lindsay, every single day, I ran into someone or multiple someones who was like, I was at work the other day and somebody told me that their uncle got cancer, and I don't know what the hell to say. So I just left, and I tell them I'm avoiding him. What the hell do I say? Right. Or something like that. And it was just shocking to me that, every single day, I can't even tell you, the stories are endless on everybody resonated with this idea of, I don't know what to say to people. Or I don't know how to let people say something to me. Like, I'm not going to open up to them because I'm not going to bring them down, and I don't want their sympathy and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool because on the bike ride I did that. I discovered that we're all just that. We're all just that. We just don't know what to say. We don't have the tools. And so that kind of fueled me to continue to do the bike ride. But I was on interstates most of the time because I had to get from point A to point B each day. I was on a schedule. The hotels were mostly donated. I think all but 1 or 2 nights were donated. And I was visiting a lot of places along the way and a lot of people along the way. So I didn't have a chance to take an extra day off or whatever. So I had to get from start to finish each day, in a very specific manner, which made it really, really tough. It made it really tough. And I learned a million lessons out there. And other lessons that I had learned in life were exclamation point, like underline, bold. Yep. That was the lesson that you learned. And it's more true now.
Yeah. And being alone with yourself and in your head and, in the dark and in the rain and all of the things that you went through, like, whoa, like that, being with yourself takes a lot of, it actually takes a lot of strength to be alone with yourself. It does, at least from my perspective, it does.
And I learned a lot out there. I definitely learned a lot, and I saw a lot, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I learned 2 of the most valuable lessons of my life out there. One of those was that I had perfectly fine grieved my sister. I was totally fine with having dealt with that loss, right? Like, I felt pretty good about it. But I realized that the one thing I didn't grieve was that nobody knew me as a kid, right? Nobody knew what I had been through, and it was not good. She was the one person. She was the one person that I could have said, hey, you remember when we were a little kid and this shitty thing happened, and how nobody will get that. That's one of the things about sibling loss. I mean, every kind of loss is brutal, but that's one of the things about sibling loss is that the people that know you as a little kid and know what you've been through, and like, you don't have to convince them that what happened.
Right. Because they were there. Yeah.
Your parents didn't see it that way. Your friends didn't see it that way. The grandparents didn't. No way. But so I had to grieve that, and that was a really eye-opening thing where I was just like, okay, I got to figure out what it's like that nobody but the person that's dead will ever know what I went through.
You've got to tell the Texas Bridge story. Come on.
Oh my gosh! All right. Well,
that was insane.
It was after Texas. It was in Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana. Okay. It was that. Well, Texas was a long road.
Texas was that was 9 or 10 days biking through Texas.
Yeah. Texas is tough to drive through.
I zigzagged through Texas as well, but on a bike in September in Texas in the heat and wind is just gross. But the 4-mile bridge. So really quick. So what happened was, think about this.
The 4-mile bridge.
Yeah. I'm on highways. And so, there's no shoulder. Sometimes there's a shoulder, but when I get on this bridge, like, I feel like I'm going to die. Like, I literally feel it because it's ominous. There's these thunderstorms and it's like cars are barreling by and I'm like, what the hell? And you got to visualize this. So and my buddy had called me ahead of time and told me, hey, there's this like hairy bridge, a couple miles long. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So when I get on, I realize there's no shoulder. And I don't know if you know this, but pay attention to this next time you're driving. When you're out in the rural areas, nobody drives in the left lane. Everybody drives in the right lane, which if there's not a shoulder means they're driving over you.
Right.
And so what I had to do was I had to get off my bike. I had to lift it up. It was a big, heavy metal bike. I had to step onto a tiny little curb that's protecting a bridge that if I fell over the bridge, I'd fall into the swamp, 100 feet below me and get eaten by alligators for sure. And I had to lean my bike over the bridge and let the car pass me so it didn't swipe me. And then I put the bike down, buckle back in, and take off again. I look behind me and I got driving rain coming at me. And I'd look behind, oh shit, there's more cars coming. I had to unhook, jump up onto the curb, lean over against the rail, not too far because I didn't want to fall over. And then I'm like thinking to myself, do I text my wife so she knows where I died? Do I just like make it a mystery? Like, how am I going to give her
a mystery?
Am I going to give her closure? Like, is it going to torture her to know I died from the fall, or that I got eaten by alligators, or I got hit by a car? And then all of a sudden, trucks are coming, and it's raining, and it's like I think I'm going to die. And I finally get to the other side of the bridge. It took me like a half hour or something because of all that popping on and off. And I talked to this lady at the convenience store. I'm just wiped out. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm just fried. I think I escaped death like 3 times. And I said, man, that 2-mile bridge was tough. And she goes, you mean 4-mile bridge? And I'm like,
that's right. Oh yeah, because your buddy said it's 2 miles. Yeah. You're like, whatever, dude.
Whatever.
This
She's
devil.
like, and she looks at me like this. She goes, son, you cannot go across that bridge on your bike. And I go, yeah, but I just did. She's like, oh.
You'd be crazy. You're crazy, David. Well, man, there are many, many stories like that throughout the book. And it makes it so interesting because you're not just talking about cancer, you're talking about the entire journey of your bike ride and how you were processing all these. It's such a wonderful read. And I'm not just saying that because, it's not like I'm making any money off of this.
Well, also, you look at 100% of the proceeds from the book go to the cancer-focused charities that were chosen by the book participants. So I'm not making any money off that.
You took that from me. I was going to say that.
Well, as long as we were talking about who's making money.
Yeah, solid point. But yeah, so Cycle of Lives is the book, guys, and you absolutely need to grab a copy of it. It's on Amazon, what have you. I'll have everything in show notes, how to find him, social, both of his books. Do you have anything else coming up for you? Are you writing more? Are you writing as well as writing? What are you doing? What's coming up for you?
Oh, well, so yeah, I'm always writing books. I've got like 4 or 5 in the works right now. I had written a few others too, and some of them were industry type books and endurance athletics type books or whatever. But yeah, I'm hopeful that one of these days I'll have more time to make it the focus of my life. But there's no money in books, unless you're freaking Stephen King or something like that, or James Patterson. There's no money in books really, or if you're Oprah Winfrey and then you write a book about running a marathon as Oprah Winfrey, you got 10 million in sales already. So,
right. Yeah.
So there's really not a lot of money in books. And I would love to, when you do something well and you love doing it, but you also have to make money at it. So
yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever. Yeah.
Whatever.
But it's been so wonderful, A, to meet you, and B, to have read your book, and C, to have been with you today. I mean, this is just wonderful. I mean, I could talk to you for like another 2 hours. So
all right. Well,
I can't do that. I can't do it.
When it's relevant, we'll talk some more. Right?
It sounds good. Thank you so very much for joining us. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with before we hit the dusty trail here?
Oh my gosh, I could leave them with a lot of nuggets. I'd say one is if you do read, thank you for reading. There's the only way that we are inspired as writers is because we think that maybe somebody out there could be touched by what we write. So if you do read, let the author know that you appreciated their work. Unless it was crap, then just don't let them know it was crap. And so I guess that's it. Just keep doing what you're doing. Like people don't talk about hard subjects. And the last thing that I think you would want from the little bit of time that we've known each other is for somebody to look at you all puppy dog eyed going, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you're dealing with that. Right. Mm-hmm. Like literally like to put yourself out there and allow people an opportunity to understand how to relate to you gives you a better opportunity to relate to them. And honestly, isn't that the greatest joy in life is to do that? So keep doing what you're doing. It's really amazing.
I love that. Thank you so very much. I appreciate your time today being with us. And you guys, like I said, I'll put everything in show notes for us and in social media. You can find his book. It's called Cycle of Lives. Again, 100% of the net proceeds go to support the charities that were chosen by the participants that were within his book. You can find him on social. I'll put that in social media as well. You can find him at david-richmond.com as well. And all of the information is there about him being an author, motivational speaker, and trainer and consultant. And you can find more about him and his journey across the United States of America, talking to all of these wild and crazy people and opening up their hearts to him. And I'm just grateful for the people that did that for you and for us as well. So thank you so much for your time today. You are exclusively invited to share this emotionally chaotic VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Do you know someone who is living in and with chronic pain or might be going through something as terrible as cancer? If you do, please send them our way here to the Pain Game podcast. I'd love to connect with them and hear their heartfelt stories of strength and wisdom and amazing awesomeness. And reviews. Stop what you're doing and hop on to Spotify and Apple and give us a quick review. We would love to have the community of listeners help drive traffic to the show so that we can continue to help others on their journeys through trauma and pain together. Please follow the Pain Game podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.